Welcome to True Health Tuesday, and the truth will set you free. Okay, we just spent 2 weeks going over thyroid. Okay, thyroid's kind of cool, but hopefully you got the idea that you cannot have an organ that's dysfunctional. Okay, what's the most important organ of the body? There isn't one. You might say skin, great, but that covers skeleton stuff. You might say brain, that's kind of cool too. That doesn't work without the spinal cord or the lungs. I mean, everything's interdependent, so you can't isolate an organ, even though with the reductionist scientific theory that like everything, you can't look at the whole, you got to break the parts down, okay, and that doesn't work. So what does thyroid, diabetes, and high cholesterol, even high blood pressure, what does this have to do? Well, we're going to get into it. The part that the sensors, I think, will allow us to get away with is going to be on the public. The part that has to be private, that I know they will censor us, because we do have a ministry of truth. It is kind of neat. I mean, I was born in America that we had certain rights, and to see it turn into a socialist, communist thing that I mean, did anyone watch TV in the 60s and 70s? Don't give me that look. We did have TV back then. There's always some young kid here. Okay, so we used to watch, and it was kind of funny. It was like a comedy. You had the Russian announcer, "We've had a very good harvest this year. It's amazing, abundance." And then they had the BBC or somebody, this is before cell phones, showing empty shelves and lines of people lined up in front of the stores. And they would ask the people, your news service is saying stuff totally different than what's actually happening. Yes, that's what happens. I never thought I'd experience it, particularly in America. It's kind of exciting. Okay, so the censored stuff will be on the Dr. B VIP. If you're already on the Dr. B VIP site, you don't even need to turn it off. It's also going to eventually be on Extreme Health Academy. I just did a 2-hour seminar or webinar. My first webinar, and if anyone ever is doing a webinar, if you see a whole bunch of pictures of people and there's a little hand up there, that means they have a question to ask. Half hour I was in the webinar before I figured that out. Okay, but it's also going to be on Library, Dr. B VIP, BitChute. So kidney. Now, kidneys are the blood filter. So when we talk about the thyroid, you can't separate the thyroid. You've got 2 kidneys the size of your fist that filter about 6 quarts of blood every 20 minutes. I mean, amazing. So the health of the blood is pretty important. Yes or yes? Okay, yeah, I think so too. Okay, now, diabetes is the most common cause. Really? And diabetes, so what does that do to the blood? Doesn't it like thicken the blood? It has excess carbohydrates in there, excess sugars. Okay, and I'm talking about 95% of all diabetics, which are type 2. 44% of new cases are from diabetes. Wow, wait a second. 95% of all diabetics are type 2. That's a blood poisoning. It's correctable in about 30 to 45 days. 24 million people have diabetes. Wait, does that mean that our population is just effective? That as soon as we turn socialist, we'll have good, clean kidneys? No, wait. So what's the function of the blood? So we're talking about blood filters the size of your fist. And so they're really small little tubules called nephrons. So what does blood do? Okay, carries oxygen, eliminates waste products. It's vital for your immune system, balances pH, incredible. Carbon dioxide, urea, lactic acid. I mean, this is everything. It's super, super important. Can you imagine if the blood wasn't efficient at doing its job? That would be a problem with all of its functions, yes? How come doctors aren't looking at the blood and saying, wow, you're in deep shit trouble? Okay, so let's look at how blood's made. For one, let's say we take everybody up here, we go up to Denver. Okay, we're about 5,000, 6,000 feet. All of a sudden, it's a lower oxygen environment. Your kidneys sense that lower oxygen and they produce more erythropoietin to produce more red blood cells. This is why it was called blood doping. Okay, now we don't even need to worry about that. Okay, having extra energy when you're doing a sporting event, because now you can get away with hormones, everything else. But back in the old days, you would have to work out in an area of low oxygen, so your body would increase the cells in the blood to hold more oxygen. I mean, it was a great idea. Now, this is what blood looks like, and I'm talking the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, good. Sergio Leone. Okay, I know there's like 4 people that got that. Okay, but when we're looking at this, red blood cells, they're like two frisbees on top. It's a biconcave disc, and it's a brilliant design. Holds a ton of oxygen, and it gets through on a cellular level. However, when you're in a stress state, the blood cells start clumping together. Now, this could be physical, chemical, or emotional stress. Now, when you have separate red blood cells, it can hold good surface. It has good surface area. It can hold oxygen. What do you think happens under stress? The blood can't hold as much oxygen. Its function decreases. And when we talk about blood pressure, there's one number over another number, systolic over diastolic. Systolic is generally considered the output of the heart. Diastolic is the overall resting pressure. And the difference of those, when we talk about blood pressure, should be around 40, 45, around there. So like 120 over 80 is normal. Okay, kind of for some people. Not really for everyone, because you could have certain stressors. However, if that pulse pressure gets larger, it means blood's not efficient at doing its job. Okay, so that's kind of a clue. So not every chiropractor has a dark field microscopy. I got 2. Okay, yeah, I mean, it's like, dude, this is so friggin' cool. You got to have one. So when you see blood like this, does that make sense that they would have, I don't know, joint problems? Because every joint, you've got 2 bones coming together, surrounded by a joint capsule filled with synovial fluid, which is a superfiltrated blood. That means all your joints are hydraulic. So when you see that thick blood, it's actually a really pretty ringtone. When you see that thick blood, it can't get into the joints. So this is why diabetics have joint problems too. They can't get the synovial fluid. So all the joints start to desiccate or dry up. What do you think the chronic stress down there at the bottom is going to have? I mean, horrible, horrible. Now, this is stress, physical, chemical, emotional stress. So what do people do in this country? I know. We're getting a lot more in, okay? No talk about the border because that could be censored. Okay, so just right now, what do people do with symptoms in this country? Do we say, wow, your body is deficient or toxic, or we should give you a medication? Not looking at your stress level, we should just give you a medication to lower that blood pressure. Does that sound stupid or stupid? Okay, good. I think so too. So how do you assess physical, chemical, and emotional stress? Because you could add those in. Physical stress, we use full digital x-rays, stress x-rays, thermography, heart rate variability will tell us about the physical or nervous system stress. And you can look at other things, like if your foot has bunion formation. That doesn't come from high heels. High heels are wonderful. Guys love them and girls feel pretty in them, and it does make you taller. Okay, but that distortion of the bunion means that you got compromised nerve supply to that. That's important because it comes out of the pelvis. Okay, and if the pelvis is off or not functioning correctly, you're talking an autonomic imbalance, because we have this automatic nervous system. One part keeps you alive under stress. That's the fight or flight. The other part regenerates tissue. That's the rest, digest, and repair. And the rest, digest, and repair come from the neck and the pelvis. So if you have some kind of trauma and you're talking to me like this and we're at the exam, I'm saying, you had a neck problem. No, my neck is fine. It doesn't hurt at all. Dude, okay, chemical stressors. You can see a blood analysis like that. Also, you're going to look at other chemical stressors, like their skin won't be healthy. And in fact, when you look at normal skin, you should be able to touch it everywhere and it's not going to turn white. If you have a pink hue and you start touching it and it turns white everywhere you're pinching it, that's a histamine release. Okay, it means there's some kind of tissue damage somewhere. What's the tissue damage? I don't know. You got to find out. And that's going to be a systemic inflammatory response. Now, people are saying inflammation's bad, inflammation's bad. What do we talk about on the thyroid? Inflammation has to happen when there's tissue damage. Inflammation is a repair process. In stupid world, you'd give a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, but that wouldn't work. You got to find out. This is more critical thinking. Find out why the inflammation's there. Inflammation is not an animal attacking you. It's the end result of tissue damage. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so you got to find the tissue damage. So when you have excess histamines, that's a big deal. Emotional trauma, okay, drug abuse, okay, high blood pressure. Because if I just yell at you, what's going to happen? Heart rate's going to go up, blood pressure's going to go up. If I put a scary movie up there, like let's say, something like, I don't know, borders breaking down, or maybe we have somebody that's a president that can't really speak, okay? So something really horrible, okay? Your heart rate's going to go up. That's an emotional trauma. But also, emotions, if anyone has ever said that you're sad or depressed or anxiety, okay, and that's a brain chemistry thing, there is no brain chemistry difference between a complete psychotic and a normal person. It's a function of the frontal lobe. And if someone's looking at mental problems and not looking at the structure or stimulus to the frontal lobe, when we talk about the anxiety and stress, they're missing the big picture. You've got the cerebellum that controls the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is impulse control, anxiety, stress, depression, schizophrenia. Okay, bipolar disorder is there. So it's everything. But then you got to look at the neurotransmitters. It's called the gut-brain connection. We cover all this stuff. Okay, so if you have anxiety, stress, or depression, and people are looking at your stress level, your autonomic function, are you in a stress state or a parasympathetic state, the rest digest? Are you looking at the gut health? How many times have you had antibiotics? Okay, do you have the histamines released? So if you have an emotional stress and there's not critical thinking onto why your body is adapting like this. So think of that. Why your body is adapting to emotional stress, why your body is adapting to physical stress, why your body is adapting by getting the high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Does that make sense? Because those are not diseases, those are adaptations. We have this automatic nervous system, and this is how you live your life. You do. I mean, if you want to survive in this world, okay, and you get hurt or injured or stressed, you want high blood pressure. You want blood pressure to your arms and legs. Where does that come from, though? It comes from digestion. So that means digestion is going to be suppressed. The blood going to the arms and legs is going to be elevated. Okay, and what happens when you're in a stress state? Well, you're going to need more cortisol for inflammatory. You're going to need more stress hormones. That means cholesterol levels got to go up. So all of these stress responses are normal. They're not pathological. Okay, if you're in a chronic state of stress, guess what? You can't regenerate and you die early. Okay, so you don't alter the physiology with a chemical to say, I'm smarter than your physiology. Yes, your cholesterol is high. Take this drug and it will lower because I know your physiology better than you do. No, that's as crazy as America being taken over by communists. Wait, both are happening. Okay, so effects of acute psychological stress on serum levels, a hemoconcentration. Let's say that you are home. Let's say you're in home lockdown. You can't see your friends or family. You can't go to your favorite restaurants. You ran out of toilet paper. No, that was the first lockdown. And then don't worry, it was only for 2 weeks. Okay, but now, let's say you're in it deeper. Okay, this could be a problem. Just emotional stress thickens the blood. So when I'm showing that slide, a really bitchin' beautiful blood and then funky blood and then really, really funky blood, okay, those are signs of elevations of stress or changes in stress. Mental stress elicits hemoconcentration with associated increase in serum lipid concentrations, that's the cholesterol going up, hemostatic factors, and blood viscosity, so it thickens. Now, we've got the kidney. The kidney's got this little tiny unit called a nephron. That's the functional unit. So you can imagine 6 quarts of blood going through something the size of my fist, okay? So it's really tiny tubules. It's everywhere. But wait, weren't we talking about diabetes? Is that healthy blood or thick blood? So the thick blood can go through those nephrons and damage it. Now, here's where the biggest challenge that we have with the world. If you have blood that's not efficient, okay, instead of brilliant, beautiful, healthy red blood cells, and the blood cells are starting to clump together, so it doesn't hold as much oxygen, right? So what has to happen to blood pressure? If the blood isn't efficient, what has to happen? Clue. It goes up, okay? Okay, I'm not going to help you anymore, okay? I'm trying to give the answer, okay? So yes, blood pressure will go up. But now let's say that you have type 2 diabetes, okay? like 95% of all the diabetics, like 100 million people in America, a third of us. Let's say that thick blood actually damages the nephrons, so you lose the surface area. So you have less surface area. Do you still have to get the same blood through? Yeah, you got the same body. So you got less surface area, so the blood pressure has to do what? It has to go up. So in crazy world, without critical thinking, okay, doctors will typically say, well, the high blood pressure is going to cause the kidney disease. Really? Or is the high blood pressure an adaptation? I know. This is called thinking. I know. It hurts, Victor. It does. I know. Okay, so when you think about that, what about people who lift weights? What about professional athletes? Do they typically, because they're going to have high blood pressure for a lot of periods of time, do they have kidney damage as well? No, they don't. But people with chronic stress, they do. People with diabetes do. So is high blood pressure an adaptation to a toxic, stressed environment? Yes or yes? Absolutely, absolutely. And why do we have an issue with this? A third of Americans, 100 million people are going to get it. Why? But wait a second. 95% of all diabetics are type 2. Does that mean, and since it can be corrected in about 30 to 45 days, and you can change your diet and it goes away, you can exercise and it goes away. People know that. So you got a disease that you change what you put in your system and you exercise more and the disease goes away. Okay, you see where I'm leading you? Is it a disease or is it an adaptation to a toxic, deficient, stressed environment? Obviously, stress. Well, here's an interesting one out of the British Medical Journal. If you take a medication, now I know what you're thinking, metformin, that's one of the drugs they used in here. And wasn't that pulled off the shelves because it causes cancer? Yeah, this is an older article. You know, you're not going to, make an omelet without breaking some eggs. So, drugs can develop side effects. It's like Vioxx killed more people than the Vietnam War. But, this one, when it was still marketable, if you took it and it actually worked to lower your blood glucose. So remember, you've got type 2 diabetes. It's from a toxic, deficient environment. And instead of adjusting your environment, adjusting your nutrients or stress level, we give you a medication that shows on your blood test. You may feel like crap, but by God, your blood test looks better. Okay? If we lower it 9%, you get a 19% increase in death. Okay, that's not good. Or you could read these books. Now, I know Dr. Seuss is illegal, and God help you if you're going to watch Gone with the Wind. These will be the next one to go on the book burning pile. Why? Because they actually tell you to be personally responsible for what you put in your system. I mean, there was an old country, it was called America, that people came to us for religious freedom. Of course, luckily the churches are closed now. But they would pray over your food because your body, this becomes your body. I mean, wouldn't it be cool to go back to that? To honor that, to get that energy. I mean, man, what a great concept. And these guys are talking about that. They're saying, look, you honor your body by putting healthy food in there, and your body responds by giving you health. Wow, amazing. 180 liters a day, 2 liters of urine a day. Of course, the people at the bar doing the beer, they're probably going to produce a little bit more because beer is more of a rental than a purchase. Okay, now this is interesting because when you go to the site, the Gov site that tells, regular people what the government says you should do, they tell you what damages the kidneys kind of from their perspective. Antibiotics, that makes sense. Okay, it's a poisonous mold. Pain medications such as non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, aspirin, ibuprofen, Aleve, Motrin, that'll damage it. Blood pressure, interesting. Wait a second. I thought blood pressure medications they would give you if you had kidney damage. Because didn't they say high blood pressure causes it? Yeah. But they give blood pressure medications cause kidney damage. Interesting. No, I know. You're too smart. This doesn't make sense. Dyes use an x-ray test. That's for sure. Now, what do they say the treatment? The U.S. government says you should treat kidney disease with. Well, give them blood pressure drugs. Okay, we know the drugs cause kidney damage. Now, I've had this conversation before, and you're going to see a lot of circular logic that is completely illogical. The kidney damage is from some mythical high blood pressure, not looking at the health of the blood. You give a drug that can cause kidney damage, but it will slow the damage to your kidneys by decreasing the pressure. I mean, does that make sense to anyone? Oh yeah, there's 3 people wearing masks and shield and drinking Purell. Okay, it makes sense to them. No, I'm talking about people with the brain still working, okay? It's illogical. And no one's looking at the cause, looking at the adaptation that high blood pressure could be because the body's not healthy. Ultimate organ, erythropoietin, I mean, it's amazing. Now, you may have heard an aspirin a day is good for a healthy heart. Well, it's interesting because they just said on the government site that aspirin can damage kidney. In fact, it's a leading cause of kidney disease. And if you're standing behind someone and you see somebody with big old huge bruises everywhere, they're on blood thinners, typically aspirin. Researchers note that conventional nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are associated with a spectrum of toxic effects people are not aware of: additional GI loss, liver toxicity, and kidney damage. The difference was noted in the incidence of cardiovascular events was irrespective of aspirin use. Wait a second, so this said cardiovascular events. There wasn't really a positive benefit, but it was damaging the kidneys. Oh, what do the kidneys do? They help regulate blood pressure. Let's look at other studies, because this was in 2000. By 2013, they did the definitive study on the aspirin a day. And sure enough, if 100,000 people take an aspirin a day, between 33 and 46 lives are saved. Okay, now I know if you're good at math, you're thinking, well, isn't that 996,000 people aren't going to get a difference? Well, yeah, but also there's going to be a 37% increase, or between 68 and 117 people will die from gastrointestinal bleeding, and about 10 people could die of stroke. So you save 33 and you can lose a bit over 100. Is there other things that, do we want thin blood? What is the best blood thinner? It's actually a mixture, okay, you might want to write this down, of 2 gases, hydrogen and oxygen. And when you blend those together, it creates a liquid form. It's called water. It's 70% of your body. It's 70% of the world. There's kind of like a correlate there. So water is actually the best blood thinner. Clear, there's an incredibly fine balance between possible benefits and the risk of intervention. We need to be extremely careful about over-promoting aspirin intervention without having first fully understood the negative side effects. Wow, that's for aspirin. They should watch about promoting something before they know the outcome. I know. Okay, now this is a bummer. Okay, early childhood membranous nephropathy. That's a problem with the kidneys due to bovine serum albumin. And what they're finding is that there's antibodies to this bovine serum, antibodies. And that means that the person, see, you're going to develop a response to proteins that haven't been tempered by digestion. So this means you had to get some type of bovine serum, and this is cow serum, somehow bypass your digestive tract and inject it into you. Food ingredients, a variety of processing conditions can induce modification of the proteins. Now, your intestinal tract is sealed up. Of course, if you take glyphosates or bread that's not organic, which has been soaked in glyphosates, that can destroy the gut bacteria, and then that will leave the yeast and molds and funguses in there, and they can actually have hyphae that bore holes in the intestinal tract. So just eating non-organic bread that's been soaked with glyphosate can cause intestinal permeability and allow these proteins to get into the system. That's one introduction method. Okay, this is a nightmare. Okay, these are actual kids with ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. I mean, think of this, an 8 or a 10-year-old kid with this? I mean, it used to take decades of crap food to develop that type of trauma. So, in what happens when we're looking at the gut-brain connection? Do they have healthy brain function or abnormal brain function? Completely abnormal. A third of our practice is under 12. I mean, it's mind-blowing. This one I got to zip through really quick, but if you look at the because you can't really say that. I'm trying to get it by the sensors. Okay, bovine serum is in a lot of the growth mediums. Now, oh, and by the way, we're going to do an event next Wednesday at Old World in Huntington Beach. And this is going to be on stuff that is completely censorable, happens to do with the events that are going on in our world. Me and Billy DeMoss are going to be there. It is so frustrating to not be able to say stuff that you want to say, okay? It's like having dinner with your mother-in-law, okay? And I love her. She's amazing, okay? I got the greatest mother-in-law in the world, thank you, God. Okay, GMO-approved foods. Now, all the genetically modified foods are generally recognized as safe. What does that mean? They haven't gone through animal testing, or a lot of animal testing, or human testing, or long-term testing. So they're generally recognized as safe. So there's the genetically modified high fructose corn syrup. This is the corn plant that has the pollen that is an insecticide. This is where they have Terminator technology where you can no longer grow your own seeds. This is how to control the entire food supply of the world. Now, what could possibly go wrong if you're cutting genes and adding them up and it creates a different protein? Okay, now I know what you're thinking. Couldn't your body produce proteins that cause cancer and proteins that eliminate cancer? And so the proteins are the messengers of the body, and they have a new untested vaccine. Well, it was tested for 2 months, but no long-term testing of injecting different proteins that your body has never made into your system. So, what could possibly go wrong? Well, this is one thing. Glyphosate herbicides are toxic endocrine disruptor in human cells, endocrine disruptors. We're exposed to chemicals like this, and they're called endocrine disruptors, that they're kind of like hormones, but not really hormones. So your body doesn't really know what to do with them. It might work them in some ways. It might wall them off in others. So there could be tumor formation, there could be cyst formation, but it just doesn't know what to really do with them because they're chemicals that your body's never been exposed to. The real impact of glyphosate-based herbicides, residues in food, feed, or the environment has to be considered, and their classifications as carcinogenicins, mutagenicins, and reprotoxins is discussed. Have you ever heard male sperm count has gone down considerably? Bt toxins. Now, this is a toxin that is an insecticide that the corn produces. Now, don't worry. Okay, humans don't eat it directly. The cow eats it. Except this study shows that it survived the cow's digestion, survived the cooking and processing, survived the mom's digestion, and 80% of the babies had it in their blood. Now, this is a toxin that destroys the gastrointestinal tract of insects. And don't worry, your government has said it's generally recognized as safe. Now, they reviewed 19 studies, and this is in Environmental Sciences out of Europe, of mammals fed commercial genetically modified soybean per trait plant. More than 80% of environmental genetically modified organisms cultivated on a large scale after they were modified to tolerate or produce a pesticide. Results. Several convergent data appear to indicate liver and kidney problems. Interesting. Liver and kidney problems. And if you're curious, we are mammals. Okay, no matter what your gender identification is, you are still a mammal. Okay, so this is a big deal for mammals. Okay, it can be damaging. So what happens? I mean, when you look at this, are your arteries being clogged because you're just defective? Okay, or are you poisoned? Okay, do you know what I mean? I mean, Linus Pauling developed a method to clean the arteries using 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C and 2,000 milligrams of L-lysine. I mean, it works. You can clean the arteries. The clog in the arteries, it doesn't clog on the inside. When we talk about heart health, we put the arteries clog underneath the endothelial layer. So it's literally, and why don't the veins clog? You know, again, bringing critical thinking into your health questions is hugely important for your survival. If you randomly just say, yes, I will go along with this, okay, you end up with what we have. Yes, it's only for 2 weeks, and it's only to slow the hospitals. That's what you say when people say cover your nose. Helps prevent heart disease and cancer. What is this? What is this that can unclog arteries, help prevent heart disease? Oh, it's flavonoids. This is in broccoli, apples, tea. Really? So what you put in your mouth can actually have an effect on your blood in your arteries. Wow. This is in almost every fruit and vegetable. Ways to reduce your risk of cancer, heart attacks, diabetes, allergies, Crohn's. Um, really? So are we the sickest population of animals on the planet? Yes, we are. Okay. Can we turn that around by living within our normal design parameters? Yes, we can. Okay, but we got to make the choice now. So what are the solutions? Physical stress, identify the problem and correct it. Okay, and we'll use stress x-rays to see if we can. Like if we just see a reverse curve, traumatically buckling, we'll be able to tell you what percentage we can get it corrected. But look at other things. Look at the exercising, joint issues, everything. Emotional, neurolinguistic programming, fantastic, works well. You got to heal the gut. You got to get a goal. When you look at our goal setting videos, okay, look at the 100 things to do, be, or become. Sleep is hugely important. You can reset your circadian rhythms within 5 days. There are solutions, but if you take a chemically induced sleep because you're stressed, you will never recover. Okay, look at the side effect. Every medication causes the symptom it's designed to treat. What is sleep medications? What's the side effect of sleep medications? Fatigue, brain fog. What's the side effect of muscle relaxants? Muscle spasms. What's the side effect of antidepressants? Suicide, suicidal thoughts. No, we're just not getting the right drug. Oh, and chemical stressors. The top one I can't talk about because the censors don't let you say anything about that. But plant-based organic, environmental air filters, clean the water. I mean, just live the way you're designed. It just makes sense. Okay, we're gonna stop it after the like now Victor's gonna go through and shut it down. Just take care of yourself. Okay, look at how your body is functioning. We're gonna get into stuff now that our government will not allow us. I know you're thinking that didn't we have free speech? We did, but we can't say that the social media is in a monopoly because that would be bad, okay? And we can't say we're being censored, we're just being checked by FACers. Okay, so if you're on the Dr. B VIP, you'll still be able to see this. If not, see us at Old World next Wednesday. I think it's 7 o'clock, I think. I don't know, I'm not quite sure. As I just found out that I'm supposed to do it next week.